I am Meredith Swartz. I am with the Department of Administration. We here at DOA have worked closely with the Hub Office to create this training. It is a lot of information. It's going to be drinking from the fire hose this morning. You will get a copy of this presentation. There's a lot of links that I reference that you can find information on the web. There is in the back of the presentation a list of all of those links for easy access. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. The Hub Office is there in the background. They'll try to answer those questions as we go along. Otherwise, like Carla said, there are stops and breaks between each little nugget of information for us to take, raise your hand. You can use the hand raise button there in Teams, and we can call on you to answer any questions that you have. I am the purchasing director at DOA. We are a unique agency with unique opportunities to volunteer with the Hub Office because the Hub Office is one of our divisions that we service. So at DOA, we are the business manager for all of the other state agencies and do things for all of our sister agencies and cabinet agencies. One set of group that we have, like I said, is the Hub Office. We have Indian Affairs, non-public ed, which became huge after COVID, serving those homeschools. And then we have women, youth, and survivors, which does a lot with human trafficking, domestic violence, and then youth activities throughout the state. We also do asset management. So we manage all of the buildings in downtown Raleigh for the state complex. With facility management. We also have state construction. So I know that we're going to go through the different rules and laws that govern how we buy. State construction has its own set of rules. So we'll show you how that kind of plays into general purchasing and how those procurements are kind of set aside to move into a different direction. We have state parking. We manage all the parking decks in downtown Raleigh. And state property. We have leased property across the state, and our state property office not only manages all of our state-owned property, but they also manage all of our leased property. Then we have state services, which is the mail service center, motor fleet. We manage buying all of the vehicles for all of the state agencies' use. And then we have purchase and contract. You're going to hear me talk a lot about statewide purchase and contract. That is the governing agency of how goods and services are bought within the state. So they are another one of the divisions that if state purchase and contract needs to buy something, such as the e-procurement system, I do the procurement to buy the e-procurement system. State and federal surplus property, we're going to go over how you can utilize state and federal surplus property if you're a small business. It's open to the public to be able to buy the state's used products and goods and services. Then we have some additional departments because we are the land of the misfit toys when we have these smaller departments that they cannot service and don't have a fiscal office. We take them on, which is State Board of Elections, which actually just went out on their own, but we have State Human Resources, Lieutenant Governor, and Military and Veteran Affairs, as well as, nope, that's it. So with that, as you see, we buy a lot of different things. It can come from consultant services for our advocacy groups, maintenance services for our facility and asset management groups, and then as vehicles, we buy contracts for different software systems. We buy things for the human resources, benefits, all different types of different areas of procurement. And so with that, we have a great diverse group that we get to buy for. Therefore, we see a lot of weird things and have become pretty much the experts in how to buy with the state. So what we're going to go over in this class, like I said, is a lot of information. You will get a copy of this presentation for that at the end of this session. We're going to talk about the rules of state procurement, those laws and rules that govern how we buy. We're going to talk about registering with the state, If you are already a hub vendor, which I'm assuming most of you are that are on this call, you have already registered with the state as part of becoming a hub vendor, but we're going to go through those basics of what that means and how to keep that information updated. We're going to go through e-procurement and how we use that, as well as EVP, which is our electronic vendor portal, and how that's utilized, and that's where you do your registration, update your information. We're going to talk about the hub program and all the benefits that you get as being part of the hub program. We're going to talk about seeking competition, how we go out to that vendor community and get those quotes, get those bids, get those proposals, how we do that. Then we're going to talk about how when we get those responses back, so how you submit your bids, how we get those quotes, and then how we then evaluate those proposals that come to us. After that, we're going to talk briefly about the award process, because you've gone through all of the seeking competition and the evaluation, and then how, once you're awarded, what happens next. And then, of course, on the back end, because once you're awarded, it doesn't stop. We monitor those contracts, because now you would have a contract. So we're going to go through all of that. Like I said, it's a lot of information, but feel free to use the chat, and we will answer those questions as they come along. All right, so starting off, we're going to talk about the rules and laws that govern state procurement. We're going to talk about the differences between goods and services, because there are some nuances in procurement. We're going to talk about the different types of contracts we have, and then delegations, which is the amount of money we're spending, and the policies that those different delegations set for how much money we're buying. So we talk about who manages state procurement. It all starts with the folks over at the legislature. They write the laws of how state money, taxpayer dollars, can be spent. So we are governed under general statutes that are written by the state legislature. From there, we have the Purchase and Contract Administrative Code, which takes those laws and puts them into a code that gives you kind of the rules of how those dollars can be spent. There's an administrative code for purchasing contract, which is standard goods and services. There's also administrative code for DIT purchases. You're going to hear me say DIT, which is Department of Information Technology. So when we buy things that have to do with data or technology, those are under a different code. But within that, with the standard goods and services, then we have a North Carolina procurement manual, and that's our processes. So that outlays how our procurements process, those rules and those procedures and those approvals that everything goes through. From there, every state agency, and when I say state agency or entity, we kind of use those terms intertwined. That's universities, community college, state agencies, municipalities, charter schools, all of that would have their own individual procurement manual. So you can get more into the weeds of how you handle those smaller purchases at each agency level. Everything within the budget manual is how we handle travel. So all of our per diems for any kind of employee travel within. So we talk about those governing authorities. These, if you would like to take a nice nap, you can go and read the general statutes or those administrative code that has the rules. But those are how we follow and how we document that we completed the correct process for each procurement. So if it's a standard goods and services, we consider that a purchase and contracts standard goods and services procurement. Those are governed under General Statutes, Chapter 143, Article 3, and Administrative Code, Title 1, Chapter 5. If it is a DIT procurement, still standard goods and services, that is managed under General Statutes 147 and then Administrative Code, Title 9, Chapter 6. State construction is a little bit of a different animal. So when we talk about state construction, we're talking about renovation or an alteration to a physical property. And we'll get into the weeds of what is considered a state construction procurement versus goods and services, because there is a little bit of overlap. But if it is a state construction procurement, those are managed under General Statutes 116, 143, and 153. And then they have their own state construction manual. Today, when we are talking about the rules and the actual processes and procedures, what we are focusing on is that statewide PNC goods and services, and then DIT goods and services purchases. So who are your potential customers that fall in that area? We've got 28 state agencies, we've got 58 community colleges, 16 public universities, over 2,500 public charter schools, 100 counties, and 500 plus municipalities. We all fall up under that same general statute. However, some of the administrative code, there are some exceptions for the community colleges and universities and the municipalities. So, but what we're all mandated, when I talk about those mandated things, such as state term contracts and stuff like that, we are talking about how those mandates affect all 28 state agencies. So who are those state agencies? One, DOA, that's me. We are over DOA. We had all of those different groups that fall up underneath us. We have the Department of Commerce, Environmental Quality, Health and Human Services, which is huge. The HHS has a lot of procurements. Information Technology, when they have to buy something for them. Military and Veteran Affairs, we at DOA handle their procurements. Natural and Cultural Resources, Public Safety, they are also very large and put out a lot of procurements. Revenue, Transportation, Agriculture, Insurance, Justice, Labor, Public Instruction, Secretary of the State, Department of Treasurer, Lieutenant Governor, which we handle, State Auditor's Office, Administrative Hearings, Board of Elections, which is finally off on their own, Community College System Office, and then the Education Lottery, General Assembly, Office of the Governor, Ports Authority, State Controller, and Wildlife. All of these different agencies are going to follow all of these rules to pretty much the same outline as we do. Anything that is specific to DOA today, I've highlighted in yellow. So when we get into our small purchase delegations, that's coming directly from my manual. May differ a little with these other departments, but everything else generally, when we talk about general purchasing rules, are all standard for every single one of these different departments. So what happens first? Somebody shows up in my office and says, something's broke, I need to fix it, or I want this new product. So we are the question people. We start asking, what are you trying to buy? Do you have some kind of scope of work? Do you have some kind of specifications on what you're trying to buy? How much do you think it's going to cost? Does your division have funding? You wouldn't believe how far we get. There's no money. So make sure you have the money before we get going down this path. And also to know what you can afford. How do you buy it? So are you going to go out to the vendor community? Do you have something internal that we have to go with? What kind of documentation is needed? We are the document people. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. So we document everything in purchasing to make sure that we're justifying how we bought this, what we bought, and how it met any specifications or requirements, things like that. Because all purchasing procedures are pretty much determined by two things. What are you trying to buy, and how much money is it going to cost you? That drives the differences between goods and services. It drives the differences between some mandated resources that we must be using versus going out open market. When I say open market, that's going out to the vendor community to get those quotes, get those bids. Delegations, how much money are we spending? And then we always have some special circumstances. So there's always things that happen. We have proprietary software, or we have to have it fit into this thing that we already have. So those types of things are special circumstances. So we talk about goods and services. What's the difference between a good and service? Goods are all commodities, supplies, materials, and other tangible property. For goods, all goods that go through e-procurement, the vendor is charged a 1.75 e-procurement fee, and we'll go over what that fee is used for and why you are charged that fee, but it is for goods only. So goods, something like cars, office supplies, things like that. Services is a intangible work or task performed by an individual or a company or a firm that requires specialized knowledge, experience, expertise, or other similar capabilities. So services are those intangible things, could be something as simple as plumbing, power washing, all the way to consultant service. So that is different, and the vendor is not charged that 1.75 fee on services. So like I said, there are some mandated resources that every entity must use. So when I say must use, the state agencies are mandated within the administrative code to use these before going out open market. So first, we do have some mandated state term contracts. So those contracts are written for the whole state to use. The vendor has to be able to service the entire state. They still go out for bid, but those state term contracts are written by statewide procurement or by DIT. And we'll get into the weeds of what a state term contract is, but there are some that are mandatory that state agencies have to use. We have Correction Enterprises. Correction Enterprises is a department or a division under adult corrections, and it allows our inmates to learn a skill while they are in prison to be able to, upon re-release, go out into the world and be able to find a job. They offer their services or their skills that they learn within while they're incarcerated to the other state agencies. So they do a lot of our furniture. They build all of our desks. We buy office chairs from them. They also offer, they have a cannery out west, out in the mountain area. So they provide canned food to a lot of the schools and things like that. They also provide print services. Now, some of their print services are very limited. They don't have a lot of like binding equipment and things like that. But we first have to go to Correction Enterprise and say, hey, this is my print project. Can you complete it? And if they can't, then we can go out and find a vendor to do it. Federal and state surplus property. That is where when we are replacing anything, we give whatever we have that is being thrown away or replaced to state surplus property. So it is all of the state's used equipment, including vehicles, computers, office desks, chairs, computers, everything. And they resell it to the community. If you are starting a new business, this is a great tool for you. They have an office over off of in Cary, off of 54. They have a whole warehouse that you can walk through. So if you're trying to set up a new office space or anything like that, go out to state surplus property. You can always find their website. They do auctions on their vehicles, boats from wildlife. You wouldn't believe all the things that they have out there. But they have on their website where they do live auctions to be able to do that. So you can just Google North Carolina state surplus property to go out there. Mail service, but when we replace something, we give it to them to be able to auction off. We also internally, if we are looking for something and we don't have a lot of budget money to spend, we can go out to state surplus and pull it back from a different agency. So we can always look for used equipment before we go out onto the street. Mail service center, anytime that we are doing a mass mailing. So you think about your DMV car registration that you get in the mail with your little sticker. That all goes through the mail service center because we get a break on postage. So anytime for, let's say, State Board of Elections, when you get your voter guide in the mail with all the candidates that are going to be in the election, all of that goes through Mail Service Center for postage. So anytime we have that, we want to make sure, can the Mail Service Center complete that large mass mailing? Sometimes they can't, sometimes they can, but we give them first crack at it before we go out into the vendor community. We talked a little bit about state construction. So state construction is when we are manipulating a building that needs design reviews. So any electrical reviews, if we're moving walls, if we're adding concrete, anything like that that would create and need an actual design review. Of course, building a whole new building becomes a state construction project. So for that, state construction uses those other general statutes on how they buy. So anytime that we have something that comes through our office that kind of teeters on that line, and we get a lot of it because we have facility management, we always give state construction, hey, should this be a state construction project or should this be a standard goods and services? And then they get to decide whether they want to take it or not. State Property Office, like I said, manages all of our leases. So anytime we are leasing property, that goes through the State Property Office. We also have at our disposal our other departments or our other state agencies, our universities, our community colleges. So if we have something where we're trying to get a consultant to come in and review, it could be something that we could reach out to the university and say, hey, we have this problem, can you fix it for us? In the case where we are just transferring funds and writing a contract between two state agencies, we simply use a memo of understanding between the two agencies and keep those taxpayer dollars within the state. So a little bit more about state term contracts. These are the contracts that are written by PNC or DIT. And so as a state agency, there are some mandatory contracts. There's also convenience contracts. We use a lot of national contracts that are out there that we can use as convenience contracts. For state term contracts, just like every other contract, they go out for bid. They go out for bid the same place that any other state agency does, and that's out on the EVP. And I will show you later where to go find all of our solicitations that are out there. PNC has theirs out there as well. And DIT, that's where they post their bids that are out. To be on a state term contract, you must be able to service the whole state. Several of the DIT, I shouldn't say several, there's a couple of the DIT state term contracts that have continuous open bidding. So it's not just a one-time bid, but sometimes they continue to add more vendors to those contracts. The whole purpose of those state term contracts is to provide the state lower prices, good quality products, and shorter delivery times, because we're able to take the data, what we have bought off these state term contracts, negotiate pricing so that, yes, we might not buy as many of these things, so therefore we might pay a higher rate, but we buy a lot of this, so we get a great rate being able to negotiate that pricing. Open market. So now there was none of those mandated resources that worked, so we're going to talk about going out onto the open market. So we consider open market agency delegation. It is what we can spend with a vendor. Every state agency, university, community college, and municipality has a general purchasing delegation which the state procurement officer at PNC and DIT approves, raises, or decreases. So all the purchases made under that level, under it, can be handled at the agency level without that statewide approval. Anything over that level has to be approved by statewide purchasing. So either it's a goods and services, PNC procurement, or a DIT procurement. We at DOA, and actually this says 50, we've been raised up to 100, but at $50,000, let's say that says 100, that is our PNC delegation, general delegation. So anything under that amount, we can handle in-house. At DIT, that is set at $25,000. So when we go over those amounts, it has to go through additional approvals at statewide procurement. So this is in yellow. This is our DOA delegation chart. So for us, like I said, anything under our $50,000 can be handled in-house. Therefore, the rules that govern how we buy that are written in my procurement manual. So this might be very different at each state agency under that 50 grand. But for DOA, we say that if it's under $1,000, it can be put on a P card. So we have a credit card contract with Bank of America where we can issue Visa cards to our employees. They can put a charge under $1,000. We consider a micro purchase. Use your P card. Anything from $1,000 to $29,000, and this is written into the code. Anything under $29,000 is considered the small purchase threshold. From there, we can just issue a PO with a quote. At DOA, we say that quote has to come from a hub vendor. So we say, if you get one quote from a hub vendor, we will issue your PO to them. If you cannot find a hub vendor, or there is not a hub vendor that provides the goods or services you're looking for, then I need 3 quotes, and we go with the lowest. From $29,000 up to $50,000, we now start requiring the vendor to sign terms and conditions when we get over that $29,000. We require 3 quotes. One of them has to be from a hub vendor. So we get 3 quotes, we identify which one's the hub vendor to be able to move forward, and then we go with the lowest vendor. But we get the vendor to sign an agreement and the terms and conditions of doing this business with the state. So that dollar amount to where we have to get the vendor to sign those terms and conditions is at $29,000. That's written in the code. Everybody has that same rule. What vehicles we use to get you to sign that, and we will go in depth as to what these vehicles are, but we either use an RFQ document or an informal quote PDF. For over $50,000 is formal competition. So that is where we go out for bid. That is where those bids are posted out onto EVP for vendors to submit proposals or bids to that solicitation document. That over that amount, because that's the general delegation amount, requires those additional approvals. We do that on an IFB or an RFP. For IT purchases, these numbers are a little different. So for IT purchases under $5,000, we just get a quote, we cut a PO. For 5 to 25, we ask for 3 quotes out the door, go with the lowest, cut a PO. For over $25,000, it becomes a DIT project. That's where we have the security reviews, we have DIT approvals, and it becomes an actual bid that goes out on the street. Any contracts that we are going to estimate to be over $1 billion have another set of approvals with DIT or PNC legal before award. So that adds some more time as to why these things take forever, is because we have these extra approvals. We talk about standard term contracts, the different types of contracts we have. A standard term contract is just an agreement between us and the vendor to buy certain commodities or services at certain prices under stipulated terms and conditions. So normally these have a contract term for how long we are going to buy them. It could be 90 days, it could be years. Agency-specific term contracts work like those state term contracts, but they are for a specific agency. So we have one of these for like a maintenance contract where we're not guaranteeing you that we are going to use it at all, but if we need it, it's there. We have response times to where you have to be on site. We tell you historical data, how much money we've spent on this in the past in the solicitation document, but we're not guaranteeing you any services underneath that. We're writing that contract on an as-needed basis, but only our agency can use it. So it's kind of like a state term contract, but for a specific agency. Standard contract terms that we can approve in-house is up to 3 years. Anything longer than that requires additional approvals, so it takes additional time to get approval for a contract over and beyond 3 years. Usually we write contracts 1 year with 2 optional renewals, and that's so that at the end of the option under the first year, it's up to the state whether they want to continue on. There's many reasons why we don't use those options. It could be funding, It could be that the scope changes or whatnot. It could be performance. It could be anything as to why we don't continue to use those renewals, but we got approval for those renewals up front. So service contracts, we have two different types of service contract. One is your standard service contract where we're just contracting with a vendor that has those specialized skills. Examples, janitorial, landscaping, medical labs, hazardous waste, all of those are, we're having a vendor come in and perform a duty. They're not leaving anything behind. Therefore, when this goes through e-procurement, they are not being charged that 1.75 fee. A consultant service is a little different. This is when we are contracting with a vendor who is going to come in, they have specialized knowledge to review and analyze one of our programs and give their advice on how they can improve our program. So they do not actually do the providing of the implementing of improvements, but they provide their advice. And they could do reports, they could do presentations on what their advice is, but they're not actually going to perform the implementation part of it. Those are what we consider in purchasing a consultant service. Those must be approved by the governor's office. And one of the biggest questions is can we handle that in-house? Is there another group that we have within the state to save those taxpayer dollars to come in and do those services? So that's really what they're looking for with that, but it adds another layer of approval. So consultant services take a little bit longer to get those approved. Just know that any vendor receiving payment for services over $600 will get that 1099 form. So we talked a little bit about DIT. So DIT purchases are under that different statute. DIT is becoming a bigger and bigger deal. Everything nowadays has a software element, has some kind of data transfer. Anytime that there is any use of data, it is now considered a DIT procurement. So it falls under the DIT statutes. That could be hardware, software, online data subscriptions, license agreements. But the big thing is data. We have a HVAC maintenance contract right now, but there is a software that regulates the temperatures in our buildings. Therefore, it's becoming a DIT procurement. So we know the way the world is going, that there's a lot more DIT. All that the DIT procurement, the extra added level is of those security reviews. So DIT approves, they are a different procurement group than statewide purchasing contracts. DIT has their own procurement approvers that approve all of the technology purchases. DIT also has state term contracts. We have them for software, hardware, telecom, IT services. We have an IT staffing contract. I think that is one that there's that continuous open bidding where they continually put vendors on it. Security reviews, just know that if it goes and becomes a DIT procurement, be sure to look in any solicitation. It could be requiring you to submit a VRAR, which is a vendor readiness assessment report, which goes over where is that data going to be stored. Also, we could ask for a SOC 2 report to show that you are secure and where you are storing any state data. All right, like I said, there's always something special. There is waivers of competition that are written into the administrative code. We do know that there's proprietary software, or that there are reasons to why I can only go with this vendor or only this brand. That is written into the administrative code under 01 NC, which is administrative code 05B 1401. But it is basically, we consider a waiver of competition anytime we are buying other than competitive bidding outside of our rules, which could be a sole source, a brand specific, it could be an emergency, it could be standardization that it needs to fit into something we already have, or it could be maybe the vendor's already done this portion. It wouldn't make sense for another vendor to come in and try to replicate because they did this portion. They have this continuing ongoing job or task. I'm gonna stop there. I know that was a lot. We'll ask any questions. Make sure you can use the hand raise or the chat.
And so far, the only question in the chat is whether we're going to share the presentation, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, we'll get that out. We got a hand raised.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Arnetta, and I just was wondering about when you mentioned about the opportunity for I just lost my train of thought for counseling for the different organizations. Did I say that right?
Counseling?
Yeah, it was on one of your slides for consulting.
So consulting is when the vendor is providing a review and an analysis of one of our programs, and then they provide using their expertise on how they can improve it. So one example would be like we had the disparity study that was done with the hub office. They went through all of our procurement rules. They went through the laws. They went through the administrative code and saw whether, and then met with each of the purchasing offices to see what their hub plans were and all of that to see if there was a disparity. They then gave their review and analysis and reports to the legislature on what they thought we could make changes to make better inclusion or have better inclusion. So something like that was considered a consultant service that went through the governor's office for approval. When we talk about counseling, if you're talking about strictly like counseling individuals, I know we have like at Counts for Women with the group of survivors and things like that, they have counseling services. You are actually providing a service. You're not reviewing a program and giving your expertise. You're actually providing counseling services. So that we would consider standard services. So some of those words and that lingo gets intertwined, but when it gets to the purchasing office, we review what the scope of work is to determine, is this consultant service that needs that extra approval or not? I hope that answered your question.
Yes, and is there an area that you can find that specifically on the hub website?
You mean like those types of bids?
Yes.
We'll get to that where we look for those types of things on EVP.
Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have Jay Wise with a hand raised.
Yes, good morning. My name is Wiseman. I would like to know, how do you add those code so you get notification when those jobs are when those like solicitation are posted?
Yep, we will get to a commodity codes here in just a minute, and when you're registering with the state, how to pick the right commodity codes, how to find those. So I'm going to get to that. That's in the next, I think, in the next section.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk about the e-procurement basics, how to register with EVP, and we're going to go into some nuances that happened with the upgrade to e-procurement in 2020. We do have a new accounting system as well, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But mostly we went from a on-premise system to a cloud-based system in 2020 with e-procurement. And then we have upgraded the EVP system that then acts with in collaboration with e-procurement. So our e-procurement system is an electronic ordering system used by most state agencies. I believe DOT is the only one that doesn't use it. I think they're still using a SaaS system, but everybody else uses e-procurement, including some of our universities and community colleges. It is the electronic single point of access for Carolina government organizations that allows us to produce purchase orders out to the vendor community, and it links to our EVP where you're registered as a vendor. And it allows for increased order accuracy through the receipt. It all is electronic and digital with consistent purchase order formats. It allows us to put comments in, have attachments of your quote that you submitted to us. So it allows for documentation for all of that. Many of our state term contracts have uploaded searchable catalogs within the system for easy purchasing access. So something like office supplies, which is with a hub vendor FSI. When we go to buy office supplies in eProcurement, when we start a requisition to their punch out catalog, it automatically takes us out to FSI's website. We fill our cart just like we're buying off of Amazon, and then it throws it back into eProcurement. So several of our state term contracts have that ability to do that, to make it very easy for us to buy. As I said, use of eProcurement does charge the vendor the 1.75 fee, however, is for goods only. So think about that when you are providing a quote for goods. Just know that shipping is not a good. That is a service. So I'm just going to put that out there. That's your first tip of the day. We do have the ability to make multiple line items within a purchase order, and it is all based on the commodity code. So I'm going to show you which codes are services and which ones are goods. So which ones would be charged that 1.75 fee. So why do you have to pay that fee? And what is it used for? So it allows us to conduct business electronically, period. It pays for all of the expenses for development, maintenance, ongoing operations of the eProcurement system. That is what that fee is used for. But it also has benefits to you. It allows you to able to market your business by registering. It also gives us the ability to pick you to send a purchase order to pick you to be able to get a quote from. There's automatic notices for when we post bids. All of that is all linked together with eProcurement. It allows you increased access to the North Carolina government markets. It's a single point of access for the public schools, the entities, and the community colleges, as well as universities. It has increased order accuracy and consistency through the delivery of that electronic purchase orders. It allows us to make change orders so that your invoice can match appropriately to the POs. There is potential for your supplier cost for marketing because, like I said, it puts you into our system to where we can then ask for those things. So in 2020, like I said, there was an upgrade, and one of the biggest upgrades was that we went from an on-premise system to a cloud-based system. Of course, that's great for us. But the biggest change that happened was that we moved to the UNSPSC commodity codes. These are nationally recognized codes. There are 8-digit codes naturally. State only uses the first 6 digits. Anything that starts with a 7, 8, or 9 are services. Every other number are goods. So when you get your purchase order and you look in there, you should be able to see the commodity code that is attached to that line. When you go to register, you pick commodity codes while registering that you would like to get alerts from. So keep in mind that 7, 8, and 9 are service codes. When we made this transition from NIGP codes to UNSPSC codes, if you were already in our system, you were automatically transitioned. I think everybody today should take this opportunity to log into EVP and check your commodity codes. If you were one of those that was automatically transitioned, perhaps what it was called before is not exactly the same as what it's called now. Go and look at those codes. That code drives everything. That's how we find our vendors, are under those codes. That's how you get the automatic notices, is from those codes. There is a searchable list for keyword or number at www.unspsc.org. That gets down to the 8-digit code. So if you are a electrician that, I don't know, provides conduit, that is down that far, we might use a 6-digit code that doesn't get down that far. But if you were able to go out onto the website, find conduit, pick the first 6-digit number, and that's the one you want to register for, whatever that's called. And it potentially is not going to be called conduit. And I'm just making that up, but that's as an example. Just know that there was lots of new features put into 2020 into the new e-procurement upgrade. There is all kinds of job aids and training that is offered by the e-procurement help desk, and that is found at this link here. Like I said, all these links that I talk about are in the back of this presentation, but the one for e-procurement training is there. John, you have a hand raised?
Yeah, just wanted to stress real quick that with the switch over to EVP, there's now basically 2 sets of codes that you can select for your company. They're all UNSPSC codes, so I don't want to confuse anybody about that. It's just one of them will be showing up on the public vendor search, and you can go in there and say, these are the things I do. And we really strongly encourage you to only select the things you do rather than the things you would like to know about or the things that maybe you could get somebody else to do. Because when people are looking for vendors, they get really frustrated if they reach out to folks and it's not an appropriate listing there. It is very important to go in and review those codes, because as Meredith said, there was a switch from our old system to our new system, and we went from 4-digit codes to 6-digit codes. So you may have a lot more 6-digit codes now than what you had before. And some of those 6-digit codes might not be perfect matches for what you do. So I would highly encourage you to go in and review that for your company to make sure that those are right. But there is another set, and I think a lot of people have not realized this, that is the set of codes that you select individually for that go to your email address as to which codes you're going to be notified about. If you have never been certified in Hub before, you will be able to make those selections and you won't be just getting the same codes that are set up for your company. But if you were certified or an EVP prior to last July, all of those codes that were identified for you on the vendor search are also in your bid notifications. So you will get bid notifications for all of those commodity codes that come up with a solicitation. And we have had some folks who said, I've gone in and I've made changes to our codes, and I'm still getting emails for things that don't make sense. That's why, because there's the commodity codes for the vendor search, and there's the commodity code for the email notification. And the reason that I put the links directly in the chat there for the selecting commodity codes in EVP is because it explains that on the first page, and it has 2 sections, and one is about the public search and one is about the bid notifications. And so I just wanted people to be aware of that and want people to be getting the information that is useful for them and not getting a bunch of emails that don't apply to you. So thank you, Meredith, for letting me hijack.
You're welcome. All right, and I did answer 1 or 2 questions while we were doing that. But now we're getting into EVP. So jumping along, EVP was upgraded last year. So it is the electronic vendor portal. It is the main hub. It is linked to eProcurement. So it is the automated business opportunity notifications based on how that vendor has selected
You're not
commodity
going to
code.
start until you take a shower.
Oh.
James, do you want to be over?
I'm gonna mute you. There you go. Go take your shower. All right. Vendor keeps information updated. So the biggest thing with EVP is that we do not have the ability to update your information. It is on the vendor to update your information. And like John said, within the new EVP, no worries, Brooke. Within the new EVP, you are able to pick somebody that could potentially be your salesperson versus somebody that's your budget person, that's versus something else. So just know that you can add multiple people to your registration. You can add multiple locations. Maybe you have one location that is for deliveries and you have one location that is your remit to. Please make sure that your remit to address matches your tax ID information. If not, we are having big problems with our new accounting system being able to pay a vendor on how they're registered in the EVP. So take this opportunity today to check your commodity codes, who is getting your notices, all of your contacts that you've listed in there, your remit to address, and all of that. We do not have the ability to update that for you. You as the vendor have to log into EVP to be able to do that. However, this is the place that we go to find our vendors. This is the place where we go to now to implement your hub certification. This is where we search for vendors, and this is where you register that we pull the information while we're going to submit a PO. We are able to select a vendor that is registered in EVP. It is also now the place where we post our bid opportunities. It is also the place where all of our formal solicitations lie. It's where you can find out who has bid with tabulations. It is the place where you can find out who was awarded the contract. All of that now is in EVP. So some benefits from the new EVP. I feel like, did we miss something? Nope. Okay. So with the new EVP, it now consolidated all of the procurement applications into a single cloud-based system. So we no longer have IPS. I know that you guys probably have heard that word. IPS is where we used to post bids. Now it is all integrated with e-procurement in EVP. For vendors, the new EVP improves and simplifies access to allow for you to do everything within EVP. You register to do business with the state. You review and submit your bid opportunities to the state agencies in there for formal bids. So that replaced IPS as well as NC bids. You register for small business enterprise and the hub certifications. You review those bid tabulations and awards. It's the new platform, makes it easier for us to find vendors because now, like John said, you can register up to that 6-digit code, not just a 4-digit code the way that you used to register. So the new EVP is fantastic. It makes everything streamlined and easy, and we will go through kind of the specifics of what it looks like. So what you will need to register with the state, as I said, if you are a hub vendor, you are already registered, but if not, then you just need internet access. You need your federal tax ID or your EIN number and a valid email. It is free to go out there and register. You're not really charged anything unless you actually buy something from you and it's a good. That's the only way that you are charged that 1.75 fee. The link to EVP is just simply, you can either Google North Carolina EVP or it is the evp.nc.gov. When you get in there, you can click vendor not registered, register now, complete the registration process. If you have any trouble getting into EVP, if you have trouble, you are logged out or you don't know your password or somebody else registered your company and you need to get in there. If you have any problems with that, the e-procurement help desk is there. They are the experts on how to help you with EVP. If you have trouble submitting a bid, call the help desk because we at purchasing can't see what you see on your side. So anytime that you have any trouble with procurement, EVP, e-procurement, we're going to talk about the sourcing tool, all of that, call the help desk. They are available 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday. You can call them over phone or over email. All right, I'm going to stop there and see if we got some questions, Carla.
All right.
Going back here.
There was a question earlier in the chat regarding, let's see.
Are digital items considered goods, such as ebooks? Yes, I would assume, because I know software is considered a good if it's not software as a service. So I would assume that something like an ebook would be considered a good.
And then there was a question asking for us to describe the process of becoming a mandated resource.
Mandated resources are resources offered within other state agencies. So a vendor, the only way for you to become a mandated resources is to be a vendor on a mandatory state term contract. And like I said, those state term contracts go out for bid just like any other contract. And I will show you, they are listed on PNC's website, which I happen to have up right this second. Lucky y'all. All right, so this is PNC's website. And like I said, they have their state term contracts listed just like DIT has on their website. You can simply Google PNC, North Carolina PNC on Google and to get to this website, or North Carolina DIT procurement to get onto their website to see their state term contracts. When you get into their state term contracts, it's going to give you not only all of the information for that particular contract and who it's awarded to and when it began and who is the manager of it that can tell you anything about that particular contract. This is the person that you would need to contact for Storefront Auto Parts. But then when you click on here, it's going to give you the actual information, their phone number. It's going to give you all of that of how that particular contract works, including a PDF that gives you detailed information on how that contract works, and then how, you know, it could be even more information on that contract. So to become, like I said, they go out for bid. They have a term. This one ends June 30. So PNC's got to do one of two things. They either have to extend it or they have to put it back out for bid. So if it's out for bid, it would be out on EVP just like anything else. And we'll go through EVP to show you how that works too. All right. Any other, some kind of way to ensure you're using the right code? I would utilize that UNSPSC to find the right code. Let's just go through that real fast. So this is UNSPSC. So let's say that I don't know the code number, but I'm looking for, I want to sell a lawnmower. It's not going to show up. So maybe landscape. When I get in here, are we looking for machinery equipment? Yeah, but that's only a 4-digit. So now we at least have the code, right? So let's get into the code. So take the category. So now let's look at that, take that out. Now we're looking for anything that was under that commodity code, right? So it's getting more into the weeds. Know that we are only going to take the first 6, not the last 2. So that is going to be your code. You would go until you found something that said that it was a actual lawnmower or whatnot. For that, just know that this is obviously a good because it starts with 1, 2, right? So it starts with 1, so it's a good. That's how the UNSPC, I mean, I saw somebody put something about power washing. Look up pressure washing, look up that. I know that's under building maintenance. So look under building maintenance. And then from there, you can get down to the codes and you find everything under building maintenance. And then from there, get down further into the weeds. This is such a helpful website to be able to find the exact code that you're looking for. Just know that then when you go to register, you're only using the first 6 digits. And then PNC, when we moved over from NIGP to UNSPC codes, there was a crosswalk. It should still be somewhere on their website. So look on PNC's website for that. So just to confirm, there's only one company that can register per EVP account. I would think you would have to register each one because you probably would have different tax IDs for each one. So you would need to make sure that your accounting is processed appropriately. Like, it's free to register. I would keep everything like that separate. So when a user goes to actually send you a PO, it matches everything. I think it's wise to keep them separate.
I have a question. It kind of goes back to your first segment, though. Is this the time to ask?
Sure.
Okay, so we do quite a bit of work for a local university, and there's a big project that they have coming up. I guess the project size total is about $170,000. You referenced earlier that they have the authority to approve up to $1,000 on the P card, and then over that, up to $29,000 if the company is it the hub designation or minority owned? How do you determine?
So for us, that was me at DOA. Those are my rules.
Okay.
So under 29,000, each agency gets to make their own rules. So my rules is that you can spend up to $1,000 on a P card, and then anything under 29,000, we can move forward with one hub vendor quote. But that is strictly a DOA rule. So that university could set whatever rules they want to for their small purchases. So you'd have to ask that university. Know that the state does not have any set-asides. So when we get down to how to evaluate a bid, your hub status does not become an evaluation tool. And I know in federal government, there's set-asides. We have an aspirational goal of 10%. We're going to get into all this with the hub stuff, but we have an aspirational goal of 10% to do business that's both goods and services and state construction with hub vendors. We each are then obligated to write a hub plan on how we plan to achieve that goal. So we put into one of our areas of how we plan to achieve that goal at DOA is that when we do our small purchases, we require hub utilization within our small purchases. But that is strictly to DOA, and each agency can do things different under that small purchase threshold.
Okay. And this may be something that my next question may be something that's agency to agency as well, but there was just a blanket question: are you state certified? And I needed clarity, like which certification are you looking for? Are there multiple hub certifications, or I don't know what she was asking.
And maybe Hub can answer that a little bit better, but I know that there's hub when somebody's asking, are you state hub certified? They're asking, are you a certified hub vendor?
Her exact words were state preferred vendor.
Sure.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'd ask. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's sorry. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't losing it. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
If it's from a different state, they may have different terms. If it's from a state agency, it might be that they have their own.
Yeah, she's new to North Carolina. I do know that. So
Okay.
maybe that's why she posed the question like that. But I guess it would more than likely be the hub certification that she's looking for.
I think so.
If she's talking about preferred, then I mean, I don't think hub is referred to as preferred anywhere, but she might be talking about term contracts or those mandated resources that Meredith was talking about earlier.
All right. I'm going to push on because I know we're getting on time, but put your questions in the chat, and we will take as much time needed at the end, if not, to get to everything. All right, so moving right along, great segue into the hub certification. So I'm going to blow through this section because most of you are hub vendors, most of you already are certified, but going over just kind of some nuances and some great opportunities that you have with the hub program. So hub was put together by Executive Order 25 and General Statute 143-128.2. Like I said, there is a goal for hub participation for both construction and goods and services at 10%. Hubs are marked in e-procurement and EVP. So when our vendors, or our end users go out to find our quotes, they can go and search and say, I want all the hubs. Show me all the hubs under this commodity code, and those are then the quotes that they go and get to and try to get that aspirational goal. There is, and you're marked then also in e-procurement. So when we do our reporting, we're able to see how many POs or how many actual hub spend is reported on, and it is pushed out through our accounting system as well. So you're marked in the e-procurement and in the accounting system. Hub application, certification, and recertification, all of that now is through EVP and is all digital and now goes through the EVP system as a registered vendor. So when I first came on at DOA, our hub spend looked not great. So I worked with our old director, Tammy Hall, as well as Alicia there when she was in the deputy spot, to try to figure out how we could increase our hub spend. So we first thought of, which now is standard in all procurements for the state, is that we added language to all of our solicitation documents that could identify potential hubs that are out there that aren't registered yet. So in the solicitation documents, you will see an attachment that will ask, are you a hub vendor? Do you identify as a hub vendor? Are you a woman, minority-owned, disabled-owned business? If so, when we get your solicitation and we potentially are going to award to you, we will give your information to the hub office to try to get you certified before we cut that PO to try to capture that spend. It also asks, are there any subcontractors on this particular procurement that some of the money on this contract will go to, so that we can grab some of that extra spend in that tier 2 category. And when we get into contracting, we'll talk about subcontractors versus the prime. Know that all of the contracts written by the state are not with a subcontractor, they are with a prime. So the relationship between a subcontractor and a prime is all between that prime and subcontractor. The state does not get involved in that. However, we, in a best effort to try to capture additional subspend, we do ask about those tier 2 vendors. We at DOA now have a fancy density system in Excel to be able to let the hub office know of upcoming opportunities. We have an annual departmental procurement plan. Everybody, all departments have to submit a procurement plan. Every year, we give our procurement plan to then the hub office that says, these are the things that we think we have coming. So with that, monthly, we at DOA can compile a list that says, these are the contracts we know that we're getting ready to put out on the street. So we give that to the hub office. Maybe you can help us find some hub vendors that would like to bid on this. We at DOA also are very thankful to have our very own hub liaison that works directly with the hub vendors and with the hub office. And one of her main things is that when we have that list of things coming up, she reaches out well before it's posted to the hub community that's under that commodity code and says, hey, we have this thing coming. You're registered under this commodity code. Is this something you actually are interested in bidding on? Then she compiles that data, and when we do go to post, she reaches out directly to those vendors that said, yes, please notify me directly when this is posted. So just in another effort to get out those bid opportunities to those hub vendors directly. We notify the hub office of all of our bid postings. I believe they put it on their website as well when we post. The hub office, then also we do that direct solicitation with our hub liaison. All of these efforts are put into our hub plan. Like I said, every department has a hub plan in an effort. What are your efforts that you're doing to try to reach out to those hub vendors and reach that 10% goal? Included also in our plan is our small purchase delegation, where we've said we can cut a PO directly to a hub vendor with a quote for up to $29,000, which is huge. And if you take out our state term contracts, because we buy every vehicle for all state agencies, which is millions of dollars, if you take that out and there are no hub vendors on that contract, we are constantly now meeting our 10 to 11%, which is excellent. So this is our hub plan. Also with those small purchases is that we get that one quote to get from a hub vendor. If we're over 29, 3 quotes, one of them has to be from a hub vendor. And then when we go out for formal bid, we directly solicit to at least one hub vendor, and we ask those questions, are you a hub vendor? And then if not, we try to get you certified if you match that status. And every time we have a renewal on a contract, we ask again, are you a hub vendor? Do you need to get certified? Those types of things. So we talk about becoming a hub vendor. Most of you have already gone through this, but this is just a good outline of what is needed. The biggest thing to take away from here is that you must recertify every 4 years. The recertification is not nearly as intense as the certification. Make sure that your certification stays up to date. That helps us reach our goal. So the ways to register now is all through EVP. Work with the help desk to help them get you registered, or work with them to help you get registered and update all of your stuff to get certified. This is the list of things coming, of what's needed with the certification. Know that if you are a certified hub vendor, it might not be called hub, in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, or Virginia, we do have reciprocity in North Carolina. It does not work the other way around, but if you are a certified vendor in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, or Virginia, there is reciprocity in North Carolina to become a certified hub vendor. These are the required documents. I'm not going through all of them, but it's there for when you need, depending on what type of business you are. You'll have this presentation to be able to go through that. But just biggest thing, make sure your certification is up to date and that utilize the hub office. The other big thing about the hub office is that they provide great opportunities to reach out and touch the state, including trainings like this. We now offer another training that is for contract management. Once you have a contract, now what? That goes into contract performance and invoicing and all of that into great detail. So take that class too. We teach that quarterly. And then Carla provides this class. You can take it as many times as you want. Either I'll be teaching or Jody Robbins from DOT. So you can always hear their side of the story too. They also have Meet the Purchaser events and how to get capital and all kinds of different things that the hub office offers to the vendor community that are excellent. So I'm a big hub advocate. Make sure that you utilize them. They are there for you. Any questions on hub?
One of the questions was, how frequently do we offer this training? And that is monthly. So to add to what Meredith just said. And then there's a question that was asked regarding, you had mentioned something about addresses matching, Meredith. And so the question is, what was that they needed to match?
So make sure that your remit to address that you put into EVP matches your federal tax ID address. Because now with our new accounting system, it pulls that remit to address out of EVP. And if your tax ID that's on your substitute W-9 doesn't match, it won't let us pay you. And we're having a huge problem with that transition to the new accounting system. So just be mindful of that. that your remit to address matches your tax ID, whatever's listed as your tax ID address.
All right.
Is that on
And
the W-9 form, or is that from the IRS from the original? Is that when you say matches the tax ID, is that from the W-9 that you submit, or is that from the IRS EIN letter that you get when you initially start?
I think it's from the W-9 that you submit. I think that's where we're having the problem. To be honest, I can't 100% say that because I'm not in accounting. I just know that they're having, because there's the breakdown from where I issued you a purchase order and it pulled it out of e-procurement and out of EVP, and then we don't even know that there's a until we go to pay an invoice and it's not matching. So I would assume that it would be on that W-9 that happens in between there.
Right,
But I'm not
right. That sounds right. That sounds right.
Okay,
W-9.
that sounds right to me logically, but some of these systems are never logical. So yeah, but that's what I think it's from. Yes.
also question in the chat about
question-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have one question. It's probably basic, but it's in regards to the vendor portal number on the PDF. They ask you to make sure you're a certified vendor. Is that number the same when you go on your EVP portal?
Yes. So if it's looking for your EVP number, I mean your vendor number, that's the number that on a bid document we're looking for. Yeah.
Okay, so once you're certified, you have a vendor number, right?
Yeah, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, that'll show up on the letter
Thank you.
that you get that says you're certified. And if you ever misplace that, if you go to the EVP vendor search and you search for yourself, you can see it under the hub. You search for your own company name, click on your company name, go down to hub, and it will say hub dash whatever the number is after it. And that's where you can find your number.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll take one more out of the chat. Do we have one more?
There is a question. If your product or service falls under more than one commodity code, how should you bid on the contract?
So your commodity code is going to drive how you get notified on opportunities. It's not going to limit who bids. So anybody that's registered, even if they're not registered under the commodity code in which that bid is posted, can bid. It's not going to limit you from being able to bid. It's just going to limit what notices you get for bids that are posted. That's the difference. So like you can bid on anything, even if you're not registered under that commodity code. So but you have to be registered, period, in EVP to be able to submit your bid through Ariba. Yeah.
All
All right.
right.
I'm gonna
I think
push
we
on.
can move on.
All right. So we're going to get into seeking competition. We're going to talk about the solicitation documents that we use, what's in those documents, and the differences between requirements and evaluation criteria, because they are different. So we talk about who writes these documents. Usually at the end user level, they're the ones you're going to hear me talk about, the guy that turns the wrench. So the guy that turns the wrench, that knows that his boiler is broken, he's the one that's going to gather information on the scope of how he is going to get his boiler up and running. He's the only one that knows that his boiler is broken. He comes to me and I say, hey, go gather some information, see what you need to do to get it up and running, develop that specification, that scope of work. Then it gets to us and we start putting it on the actual solicitation documents. We review his scope to make sure it has things like, when does the work need to happen? Do they need to move something so that they can get to the equipment? Did you think about this or that or that? So we are the question people again when we are putting together that solicitation document, trying to make sure, because that solicitation document eventually, what is in that scope becomes the contract. So the contract becomes from what is in the solicitation document and also what the vendor submits as their proposal, all together becomes part of the contract. So if it's something as simple as a small purchase, we ask for a vendor quote. That is potentially your contract. However, nobody has to sign anything. So your quote is simply attached to a requisition that then we are using to execute your PO, their PO against. So a quote needs to be branded. It needs to have your name on it. It needs to have some kind of thing. It can't just be an email that I'm going to give you 5 widgets and they're $3. It needs to actually be a certified, not a certified, but a quote from a branded vendor. It has to be 30 days current by the time we're cutting a PO, and it must be attached in e-procurement. But we go out on EVP to find those vendors to get those quotes from. So we at DOA, if we get a requisition in and they haven't identified the hub vendor that it's coming from, we reach out to them and we say, hey, this isn't a hub vendor. Which hub vendors have you reached out to? And if not, then we say, well, you need to get with the hub office. Maybe they have somebody that can do the work for you, and get the word out on the street to try to have that hub inclusion. Those quotes are attached in e-procurement, and then we issue the PO. We have an informal quote or PDF. This is where we got to get that vendor to sign those terms and conditions. So it's anything over $29,000, but under $50,000. So it is a simple PDF where we send it to the vendor. It's like 4 pages. It's for simple goods or very simple services where we don't put a lot of scope in because there's not a lot of room to do it. It's literally like, I need 7 widgets and you need to tell me how much money they are, and then it automatically totals this much money. The vendor is agreeing to the North Carolina terms and conditions. We countersign it and it becomes the contract for that. So because it's the contract, it can be used up to $50,000, because over $50,000, we have to do the formal bid process. Here again, we are reaching out directly to vendors, usually via email, to say, hey, sign this document. We've gotten, we know that you can do the work. We're not going to evaluate anything. We're simply looking for pricing. So it's used up to that $50,000. We go out on EVP, find those vendors to send these to directly. It is not a posted solicitation. A request for a quote is also used in that exact same scenario. However, maybe we have a lot more scope that we need to put in. So we use it when soliciting for those things. We use this document if we need to give more scope, up to 50 grand. This document is also used in those special circumstances where we waive competition. So if we justified why this was a sole source purchase, or why this was an emergency, or why this was whatever, we use this document to send directly to that vendor that includes the scope, that includes those terms and conditions, to get it executed, to have the contract for that. It is sent via email back and forth. It's opened as soon as we get it, but it can be used for small informal competition, solicitation, or for those non-solicited procurements for waivers of competition. And it's called a request for quote document. Now we're getting into formal bid. We have what is called an IFB. This is a formal solicitation for well-defined goods or simple services. I know what I need you to do. I need you to come into this room. I need you to sweep, mop, vacuum. I need you here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. While you're here, this is what's going to happen. You just need to tell me how much money it is. I maybe need a general contractor's license for you to do it. So that could potentially be a requirement that you submit with your bid. But basically, we are basing the award on the lowest cost that met any of those requirements or specifications. Maybe there's specifications on the goods that I'm asking for. So you have to meet those specifications or meet requirements, and then from there, it's based on how much money it is. For all formal bids, they are posted out on EVP for a minimum of 10 days. And we'll show you where that 10 days is. We have public bid openings. There potentially could be site visits, all involved in the formal bid process. Those public bid openings for us at DOA, we are doing those over Teams. Just know in the bid openings, you don't have to attend. Lots of times now when the rules state that we just read out who bid, we don't read out pricing at the time of bid opening. We will then post tabulations at the time of award. And that allows that if we had any negotiations that happened, that final pricing is posted out on EVP. The next type of document we have is an RFP. We use an RFP. We are soliciting for, we know what the result needs to be, but we want the vendor to propose their best solution. We may look at other things besides just cost to evaluate on. We could look at what have you done in the past that's of similar size and scope. We could look at who's doing the work. What are their qualifications? How are you technically going to complete this outcome that we want? What is the equipment that you're bringing to the table? What is your response of how you're going to meet these different tasks? How are you going to do that? And we could evaluate all of that to then make our decision on how we're going to award. Cost is always a factor, but could not be the most important factor to us. Those two are posted out on EVP for a minimum of 10 days. There could be pre-proposal conferences. There could be site visits. We have that same public opening where we read out who bid and potentially we hold on to cost until the end of the award. The other type of document that you will see, we do not use this very often because it takes a lot of work on the vendor community and we usually don't get a great response. However, we post these out on EVP. They're called a request for information. All we're trying to do is gather information from the vendor community. The only time that I've ever used this was when we were trying to buy a software and we didn't know what our technical requirements were because we didn't even know what they could be. So we put this out, hey, we need a system to manage our fleet of vehicles. So can you tell me what your software does? And then from there, that's going to help us eventually write an RFP to then actually award a contract. The RFI is simply canceled off of EVP once we get all of that information. It never becomes public record until an RFP where we use the information from the RFI is awarded. So we hold on to that information. It's strictly for information purposes. Therefore, it is not used very often. In these documents, these are on the P&C goods and services documents. DITs look a little different, but on the norm, our normal standard purchase and contract goods and services procurements, these are the different sections. We have templates. They are templates. They can be changed. This stuff can be moved around and wherever that particular procurement specialist is putting it. But on the norm, when you go out on the EVP and you pull a standard RFP or an IFB, this is what it's going to look at. Section 1 is going to be why. Why do we need this? Is there some kind of, is this just a standard thing that this division does? Is there some kind of statute that says that we have to buy this? Why are we doing it? Could be when does the work happen? It will also include the contract term. So is it that 3-year contract? Is it longer than that? Is it 1 year with 2 optional renewals? Section 2 is all the information on how to bid. So that's going to include your schedule for the bid. That's going to include the question and answer period. This is going to be your tip number 2 of how to use that period for your advantage. It's going to include what needs to be included in your bid. If it's not there, you could potentially be found non-responsive. So it should have a list. You have to have this with your bid. It also tells you where to submit your bid. We speak in letters and numbers in the state, so we have definitions for all those acronyms that are going to be in that bid. Section 3 is how we're going to award. It should tell you if there is a point scale, if we are going to look at what you've done in the past and who's doing the work and all of that, it will be listed under Section 3 of how we plan to award this. Section 4 are the requirements of the contract. So it could talk about pricing and invoicing, delivery, warranties, references. If we are asking for that vendor experience, what are we looking for? If we are asking for proposal requirements, what are those? If we're asking for samples, financial stability, financial statements, any certifications or background checks, any personnel information. So those are the requirements to be able to bid. Section 5 is the meat. So this is what you would be basing your performance under this contract is what is in Section 5. So Section 4 are the requirements to be able to get the contract. Section 5 is then once you have the contract, these are the specifications or the work that you will be held to if you have the contract. Section 6 is then on the back end of how we manage that contract. Are there any reports? Who's doing the work? What is their information? If there's any recalls, if there's changes to the contract. And then attachment 6, or the last thing could be attachments. That's where our pricing form is an attachment. We always ask you how much this is going to cost me. Instructions to vendors, how to bid. Those terms and conditions. Is the work happening in the US or overseas? EO50 is a price matching opportunity. We'll go over that in a little bit. We do have an attachment for financial condition that just says that you're in good financial standing. So that could be an attachment. That supplemental vendor information, that's our hub chart. Are you a hub vendor? Do you identify as a hub vendor? Are there any tier 2s on this contract? We could have maps or diagrams or anything else that we need to give you information to be able to bid appropriate. So like I said, these are templates. This is kind of a standard outline, but they are subject to change. The only other kind of documents that we use is documents because nothing ever is constant in procurement except for change. There's something always changing. So if we change something before we open, so while it's solicited, we do it on an addendum document. So if that addendum is something that's changing before you bid, you need to read that to make sure it doesn't change your bid. That also includes when we all submit those questions, we compile them, put them on an addendum, and post those. Addendums are posted to EVP just like the bids are. A request for clarification happens when we get the bids open and we submitted something and we don't understand it. We might send you a request for clarification. You cannot change your bid with a request for clarification. A BAFO is a best and final offer. This is once we enter into negotiations, this potentially could change something in your bid. It requires a signature by both parties to become part of the contract that then solidifies any of those negotiations that we did. An amendment is a document that we use to change after award. So after the contract's been awarded, then if anything changes, it would be on an amendment document. When you see these documents out on EVP, the biggest thing to look for is shall, must, or mandatory. Those are things that are definite. If they're not there, you potentially can be found non-responsive. Just make sure you read those things, that if it says that you must submit that general contractor's license and it's not there, you're automatically thrown out. If it is a mandatory site visit and you didn't attend, you cannot bid. Those types of words. Make sure that you sign your bid. You wouldn't believe how much work goes into some of these and then you don't sign them. If it's not signed, it's automatically rejected. By signing this, you are saying that I am willing to provide the services and goods within at the pricing that I've quoted within. So that is a legally binding document as soon as you sign it. We talk about a schedule, we talk about that 10 days. 10 days is from the issue of solicitation and submitting of bids is where that 10 days falls. that's required by code. However, if we have all of this other jazz that happens in between, that could be a lot longer than 10 days, especially a complex RFP. We try to give you guys as long as you can to make sure we get a good bid from you. But if we have a site visit, if we have that question and answer period, we have to leave time to get the correct answers. The difference between contract award date and contract effective date, let's say we have a janitorial contract that ends June 30, and we know that it is starting, the new one we need to start is July 1. We might have awarded the contract back in May so that we could get the background checks done and the badging done and all of that to be able to start work come July 1. So the award date could be earlier before you actually start work. So those are the difference between those two dates. All right, here's your big slide. Use the question and answer period to your advantage. You can ask anything during the question and answer period. You can ask, how much are you currently paying for this? You can ask, who currently has this bid? You could ask, I don't understand task number 5. Can you please explain to me what you mean by XYZ? You can ask, I have this experience. Does that meet your needs for when we talk about experience? What are you looking for in experience? You can ask anything. I'm not saying that you will be satisfied with the answer that they give you, but they have to give you an answer. So just know that we answer, even if the same question is asked 30 times, our answer will be look at answer to question 1. We have to answer every question that we receive during the question and answer period. Most of those questions now in section 2, it's going to tell you where do you submit your questions. You can call the person that is responsible for this bid. You can contact the contract administrator that has written this bid and has it out on the street. They're the only people that you can call during the bid process. However, any of the information that they give you over the phone is not binding. If it is put into this question and answer period, it becomes part of the contract. Their answer is then binding. So be mindful of that. Any questions that you answer over the phone or while you're walking around on a site visit, those are non-binding. If it's put into writing, it becomes part of the contract. They all usually have a deadline as to when they have to submit those questions. They don't have to answer any more questions after the deadline. This is a one-shot deal. So you get one shot to ask your questions. They provide an answer. There's not usually a follow-up, I don't understand your answer situation. So just be mindful of that. But use this to your advantage during the question and answer period. You can ask anything. Site visits. We have 2 different types of site visits. We only usually have site visits if you physically need to put your eyeballs on what you're bidding. So maybe you need to take measurements, or you need to know what the building looks like, or you need to know where you're going. And especially if you need access to get into the building, we will make that a mandatory site visit so that you can walk around with us. If it is a mandatory site visit and you do not attend, you will not be able to bid. You have to sign in. You cannot be late. We will not take late people. Make sure, especially if it's downtown right now, they are blowing up buildings and there's construction everywhere. Take time to know that you have to park in a parking deck and walk to wherever you're going. So take that time to know that you cannot be late to be able to bid. If you do not get your name on that site visit sheet, that's when one of the first things that we look for when we're looking for responsiveness is on a mandatory site visit. Is your name on that? Is your firm on that sign-in sheet? Not necessarily your name. The other type of site visit we can have is an urgent and caution. That's just we set up a site visit that you can be there and walk around and see it, but you don't have to see it and you don't have to attend to be able to bid. You can be late, but being late is not nice, but you don't have to be there right at the dot. We still make you sign in just to know who's there. So submittal instructions, like I said, this is all under section 2, usually, of these documents of where to submit. Be sure that you follow those instructions. A lot of us now are using the Ariba sourcing tool. I think the majority of everybody is using the Ariba sourcing tool that is linked to EVP. So you will find the bid out on EVP. you say you intend to bid, it will send you an email with the link into the tool to be able to upload your response within the tool. We do have direct submittal that we use for those small purchases with the RFQs and the IQRs. Some people maybe still use mail, but most of us are now remote. So we are using that NCEP sourcing tool, which is a module of e-procurement. So it's all linked together. When you're looking through these documents and you're looking for those must, meet, shall, mandatory, those words, those are requirements. So they're specifications that the vendor must meet or submit with its proposal to be found responsive. Those requirements are usually a yes, no. They're not usually evaluated. There is some little gray area on that, but normally it's like, is it there or is it not? You know, if we ask you to be a doctor, D equals diploma, you're still a doctor, right? So we're not asking, are you the best doctor? We're asking you to provide your PhD, that type of thing. Some examples of requirements are vendor must deliver product within 15 calendar days. So if you didn't deliver the product within 15 calendar days and yours came 30 days, maybe we need it faster, that potentially we could go with a higher vendor because you didn't meet the delivery requirement. A vendor must submit with its proposal a copy of its general contractor's license. So we said that it has to come with the proposal. If it's not there, you didn't meet that requirement, therefore you're automatically rejected. It doesn't matter how much your bid is. A vendor must submit with its proposal 3 references where it performed similar work. So are the references there? Then the evaluation team can look at the references and call the references to see if it was actually with the similar work. Last one, vendor must provide a product service manual. If I saw that in a bid, it would strike me as maybe I'll use the question and answer period. Do I need to submit that with my bid? Because it doesn't say that. Do you need it when I deliver the product? That's very unclear. So I would ask during the question and answer period, do I need to send that manual now with my bid or can it come with the product? I want to make sure that I'm not responsive. So just be looking for those must, shall, mandatory words. Those are all requirements. And if you see something like that that's very unclear, ask it during the question and answer period. So evaluation criteria are how the vendor intends and plans to complete the project. So it is what we are looking at to evaluate whether the vendor is the best vendor to get the award of this project. So these are usually the 3 biggies that are in there. We could really have evaluation criteria on anything. We can make it as specific or not specific, which gets us into trouble. So if you have any questions on what they're looking for, ask them during the question and answer period. But if we're looking for, you will see a lot of time past relative experience, vendor experience. In its proposal, the vendor shall demonstrate experience with public, private sector clients with similar or greater size and complexity of North Carolina. So some of you might ask, what does that mean? Well, if this is for a power washing bid, and you tell me that you have power washed the 17,000 homes in this neighborhood, you are not of the same size as hooking into the side of a building and rappelling down and power washing a 16-story building. But if you say, I've power washed for the airport, or I've power washed for Bank of America building, that's of the same size and scope. So anytime that you can provide as much or as little information with your proposal as you want to. So anytime that we are asking you to provide us with information, look at the scope of work. Look at whatever we're asking you to do, because that's what we're judging that experience on, or that technical approach, is how is it similar to what we're asking you to do? So if you don't have any experience with state government, still you have private experience, but it could still be of the same size buildings. It still could be of the same size employees or whatever it is that you're trying to do. You say you did this consultant service for, I don't know, something that would be relative, but give them the information that this service was provided to this number of employees, even though it was private and wasn't governmental, it still could be relatable because it's of the same size as to what we're asking you to do. So that's really what we're looking for when we're looking for evaluation criteria. Same thing with staffing plans. So we're looking for who's doing the work, how are you going to disperse the work among your staff, and then what are their qualifications? Their qualifications could not be with your firm. They could have been for their jobs that they had before they're with your firm. But what are the expertise of that staff to do that work, and how is it relating to what we're asking them to do? Technical approach, this is the outline of how you're going to complete those tasks. So make sure you're as descriptive as you can be on how you are going to meet those deliverables and those schedules. Make sure if it asks you for a timeline, the timeline is there. Just read very closely as to what they're asking. If you have any questions at all, use the question and answer period to make sure that that rises your bid up to the top, to make sure that you know what they're looking for. Any questions on the bid stuff?
There is one question in the chat that we didn't get to, and the question is, are we penalized for not responding to RFQs?
No, you're never penalized for not responding. Well, I'm assuming you say just not submitting something, then yes, you're not penalized for not submitting and not participating. Know that the only way that you have the right to, and we'll get into protests in the back of this, but the only way that you can protest an award is if you participate. So that's the only way that you could say that something was wrong or whatnot, is if you actually participate. Yes, if you did participate, you could be found non-responsive. That's why I'm using the word responsive, but that's, yeah.
So we're at hands raised, and Raphael, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, good morning. A quick question. Is there like a class, something like similar to this, where we can have a how to put together a proper request for proposal or request a bid, things of that nature?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, because I've done a couple of requests for like proposal and things of that nature, not so much through Mecklenburg County, but for the city of Charlotte, and I haven't had one be accepted, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
And I'm in the back of this, one of the last things we talk about is public records requests and how you can use that to your advantage too, to find out. Everything that we do in state government is public record. So you're able to go pull their evaluation to show why you didn't get awarded. So even on the back end, you can do that research to know, okay, this is why I didn't get awarded or whatnot. You can do a public records request, but that's, we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We have Brittany, if you want to unmute.
Hey, so this is Brittany's husband. We are we're in business together, and we have a pressure washing business. As far as like the commodity codes, as you guys know, there's almost 1 million of them, it seems like. But we pressure everything from residential houses to buildings. We come in and do efflorescence cleaning, like before joint sealing. So what would be your recommendation on finding the best commodity codes for our particular business, because we don't want to miss an opportunity?
Right. I would think that if you use that unspsc.org, start there. Start with building maintenance, because I know the one that we do, we have a pressure washing bid that's contract, and it's under building maintenance. And from there, like I said, so get to building maintenance, which is a category. And then from within building maintenance, get further down until you can get into the weeds of even that 8-digit code, just know that we're only using the first 6. And that's the one that you should register under. Or you can always go out on EVP, do keyword search for pressure washing. They're also called something else besides pressure washing. I can't remember the word for it. But you can search and see if anything's out there, open, closed, whatnot. All the bids stay out there now. Anything that's been posted since last July is out on EVP. And then from there, you can look and see what the code was that one was posted under. Make sure that you're registered under that. That's another good way to look and see what eventually was out there, and then grab those codes as well.
Okay, and I have just one follow-up question after that.
Mhm.
Of course, we're in North Carolina. We want to work predominantly in North Carolina, but for instance, Virginia Beach, Virginia is closer to me than Charlotte is. What
Mhm.
is the general outlook on being kind of like members of different states for doing this? Is it frowned upon?
No, we don't. Not unless there is some kind of criteria where you needed to have, and they would have said it in that particular solicitation that they're looking for experience within North Carolina or something like that. But for something like pressure washing, that definitely, we don't care where it happens. But there could, I'm not saying that it never would. Maybe there's some kind of rule that only North Carolina has, and that's why they're doing that. I'm not sure, but it would have to be specified in the document if that's what they're looking for. Other than that, we don't care where it happens.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then Jay Wise, if you want to unmute.
Yeah.
Thank
Hi.
you, Art.
Yes, my question is, can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, my question is similar to the previous gentleman. Are there any resources available? Because as a lot of people are probably new on doing that, and it's so specific and it's broad. How do you really send a proposal? And for instance, like you said earlier, if you requested any I forget the right term you use, the terminology, and then where we have to I'm sorry, if something is wrong with the proposal and you requested for clarification, and then we cannot change the price of the bid. So if we made that mistake, how do we know beforehand how to send a correct proposal? Are there any people that can help us out? Things like that. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what you're asking is, I'm going to show you how you can do some research to make sure that you're bidding appropriately. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And then you can ask during the question and answer period, what are you currently paying? That's a good starting point for pricing. As far as helping you submit a bid, there is small business centers across the state that the hub office can give you access to through the community colleges and things like that. And I know Shay with the hub office is great with doing that. So they can offer you, reach out to the hub office, and maybe they have some more training opportunities or some more contacts that they can give you. I think is my best answer for that.
That's good, Meredith. And I am dropping Sharonetta McIntyre's contact information in the chat.
Okay. I'm going to move on. I know we're pushed for time here, so I'm going to keep on going. All right, so we're going to get into how to respond to these bids. We're going to talk about direct submittal. We're going to talk briefly about the e-procurement collaborative space. That is a space within e-procurement you as a registered vendor can sign up for, and then EVP solicitation search and response, how to respond in EVP. So we talk about how to submit your bid. Like I said, if it is a formal bid, it will be listed under section 2 as to where to submit your bid and how to submit it. Over email for those small purchases, normally nobody uses fax anymore, so everything's pretty much going over email. For our small purchases. When we say small purchases, we're talking under $50,000. If it's just a RFQ or an IQR, They're in even over that $50,000 if it is a sole source waiver of competition where that RFQ can be sent back and forth. Know that if it is a just direct vendor quote for small purchases, that it has to be branded and it does have to be 30 days current. We're going to talk briefly about the collaborative space. We at DOA are not using it, so I'm not too familiar with it. However, there is training on the on eProcurement's website on how that collaborative space is used. I know there are a couple of agencies that are getting into that. It is a tool within eProcurement that when you do your registration, you can say yes. When you say yes, I want to be able to receive POs, it also signs you up to be part of the collaborative. EVP, so this is a big one, either by mail, these are those formal solicitations, or using the sourcing tool. We're going to get into the actual sourcing tool, what it looks like. Agencies use the EVP vendor search to find vendors for all of them. So whether we're directly soliciting or you're getting those automatic notices from those commodity codes, that all happens through EVP. So like I said, that collaborative space is a informal quoting solicitation where when a requisitioner is putting in a requisition, they can reach out directly to vendors registered in EVP within eProcurement to get quotes from that, then it automatically populates their requisition. So we can use that collaborative requisitions to obtain quotes for goods and services with multiple vendors at the same time without reaching out. That lets us reach out within the system to get those quotes. There is those training resources on the eProcurement website. It can be, you are signing the terms and conditions within the collaborative space. So know that that is happening as well, is that that's getting you to agree to the state's terms and conditions through the collaborative space, and therefore it can be used for purchases up to $50,000. DOA purchasing is currently not using the collaborative space. However, I know it's coming. EVP solicitation, search, and response. So of all the things EVP does, now one of the biggest things is where we post our solicitations for our formal bids, IFBs, RFPs, invitation for bid, request for a proposal. It allows us to advertise those solicitations, seek open and fair competition. It also allows us to post the tabulations of the bidders' prices once the bids are opened and potentially once they're awarded. It also allows us to post the award of the contract. They stay out there indefinitely. It used to be on IPS that those would go away after 30 days. Now with EVP, it's out there indefinitely. So like I said, do your research out there on EVP. You can look by keyword to see if something has been posted out there and look at a past posting, look at the awards, look at the pricing, look at the scope, look at all of that, because it's all out there on EVP. It allows you as a vendor to market your goods and services, because that is giving you automatically notifications of things out there. You can also search 24/7. You don't have to be logged in to search. You can search for all the opportunities. We at the state agencies post out there, municipalities, schools, university, community colleges, everybody posts on EVP. It is free to register, as we all know, and then you can review who's been awarded and what the tabulations were to see where you are. This is what EVP looks like when you log into it or when on the website. You can sign in right here with your EVP login. You can sign up right here if you're not already registered. This is where you browse solicitations, and you can browse vendors just like we can. So perhaps there's a site visit for something and you are a subcontractor and you would like to provide a piece to this. Show up at a site visit. Nothing's saying that you can't talk to the other vendors there and say, hey, I provide this piece. Maybe let's go in together and submit a bid. You can browse vendors just like we can, by commodity code, by address, by whatever. So you can search for our vendors just like we search for vendors to see if you can team up with and network to be able to submit a bid together. So all of that information is out there on EVP. If you are looking for solicitations, so you have either hit the button here to browse solicitations, or you have hit the button here to browse solicitations, and now you are in this window. If you hit filters, then it brings up this window to search. So you can search by category. You can search by department. That's going to give you all the bids that DOA has. It's going to give you all the bids that Department of Revenue has. It could give you all the bids that UNC Charlotte has out there. You can do by, maybe you know that something's been posted. When was the last date it was posted? Does it have a site visit? When is the bid opening date? You can look for open bids. That means that it's still open, it hasn't closed, they're still receiving bids. You can look for pending selection. That means it's open, but it hasn't been awarded. You could look for open awarded bids or canceled bids out there. You can look for bids that are only used in sourcing or not, and all of those. And you hit apply, and then you can export results into an Excel document that will give you all of that information. Once you are into a solicitation that you want to bid on, so this one is for Department of Transportation. This is the commodity code in which it was posted. This is the opening date. This is the solicitation number. You will hit respond to solicitation. You can only hit this button once you are signed in, because you have to be a registered vendor to respond to any of these solicitations. So once you hit respond to solicitation, it will send you a link via email because you are now signed in to get into the sourcing tool to be able to bid. When you are looking here at this potential bid, it will not only give you the description, it'll also give you the document, the solicitation document, the IFB or the RFP. It'll also give you any amendments that have been posted, will be also in here on EVP before you get into the tool. So all of that information there is for you're ready on EVP. Once you get your thing, I want to register, it sends you into a link. Just that is taking you into e-procurement sourcing. What this tool does is allows you to upload documents. So it'll allow you to download the IFB, the RFP, fill it out, and then upload your response. If our pricing form is an Excel document, it allows you to download the Excel document, fill it all out, and then upload that Excel document. You will have to log into there. If you have not ever used Ariba, it will ask you to register to do to use the tool there. So know that that is separate from your EVP login. Each section, the great thing about the tool is it allows us to pull out sections for you to respond to. So if we were asking for that vendor experience, that technical approach, those types of things, we can pull that out and say, respond here to that. So it allows us, when we're evaluating, to be able to say, this was their response to their technical approach. Makes it very clean and easy to respond to. It also helps with non-responsive. So if we are asking for that contractor's license, we're able to pull that out and say, respond to the contractor's license with your license right here. And that hopefully will trigger you to respond with something that's in there. It's not saying that you don't respond with a Word document that says happy birthday, but it does at least make you think, hey, I need to put my license in here. There's all kinds of training also provided by the help desk on the Ariba system and the sourcing event. So make sure that you are checking out their website as well for that additional job aids and training. Once you are in the tool, this is kind of what it looks like. Like I said, if you have any problems when you are responding to a bid, check with the help desk. They can walk you through it. We cannot see what you see. So it looks very different. Sourcing looks very different on our side at purchasing. The help desk can see everything that you guys see. This is your document. This is how many time is remaining. Do not wait until the bid opening date. That is that time that's there. If that clock goes to 0, it will not let you upload anything else and you are done and found non-responsive, found non-bidding. So make sure that you do that with plenty of time, Make sure that you don't do it too far in advance, that there might be an addendum that's posted that could potentially change your bid. So there is a sweet spot. I would say at least a day before opening, post here, and then just be on the lookout for any addendums that can be posting. But that way you make sure that you're meeting that deadline. You can review any prerequisites. You can do, there's a checklist here to make sure. It will not let you move on until you've met any required uploads. Any questions on submitting a bid?
We do not have questions in the chat that haven't been answered. I do see a hand raised, Brittany Pope, if you want to ask your question.
Sorry, this isn't about the bid process, but I was just seeing, how do you, there's a certification, it says Minority Women Business Enterprises certification. How do you get that? Is that something separate?
That is usually associated with registering with some of our municipalities. It's usually associated with registration. And those municipalities are going to want you to be hub certified. And so my recommendation is hub certification and then registering with the municipalities programs. A couple of the municipalities such as Durham and in the Charlotte area will have a certification, but for the most part, it's a registration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
A lot of times MWBE is used as sort of a synonym for hub. It may be a term that's a little more common in the municipalities than at the state level.
Thank you, John.
All right, I'm gonna push on. All right, so we're getting into evaluating. So we got bid openings, evaluation methods. We're gonna talk about reference checks, that executive order 50 price matching, and get into the weeds of certifications and BAFOs. So with your bid proposal, we have an opening. And so that's with our formal bids. We have that formal opening. It's part of, it is listed in the solicitation document when that is. It's at a specific time, location. Like I said, we're doing ours over Teams now. And so you can join on the Norm. We are just reading out who bid. Know that any late bids, like I said, if you miss that cutoff in the sourcing tool, it will not even show up for us as an open bid. If it's still mailing in bids and you miss that cutoff, they mark them as they come in. And if it's late, we won't open it. We take attendance of who shows up at the solicitation document simply because we are the document people. We want to make sure that we have everything in that file. Usually once we open, we'll give an explanation of, okay, these are the next steps. Because this is now over this dollar amount, it's got to go to PNC or DIT. These are the next steps in the process. Anything that you have any questions during that evaluation process, you can reach out to that purchasing agent. They can simply tell you it's still under evaluation, but they can tell you it's now with PNC. The team has submitted their recommendation to DIT or where it is in those final processes. Because of all those approvals, sometimes these things take many days, months to get done. So it depends on how many of those approvals it's got to go through. And usually the purchasing agent will tell you where we are in that process. Tabulations will then be posted to EVP with the names of the bidders and then updated to show that pricing after award. So we talked a little bit about how we can evaluate. We have the lowest cost method, which is awarding to the lowest vendor that meets those requirements of the solicitation, those yes, no's, and offers the lowest cost to the agency. Know that our costs can be evaluated for total cost of ownership. We had a generator bid at one time that we posted to get a new generator. The lowest bidder was going to take the longest to get to us. And then we were renting a generator until that generator could get to us. Therefore, the next to the lowest actually was cheaper because they could get it to us and we wouldn't have all of those rental costs in there. So know that cost can be evaluated to be total cost of ownership. The other type of evaluation methods we have, whatever the method is, it will be listed under Section 3 of the bid document. Best value is written into our code where we can do a scoring method, a weighted method of evaluation where cost versus their technical proposal would be evaluated on how much a point stipulation is attached to each one of the criteria. So that whatever those point structure is will be listed in the bid document. We will then be documenting those strengths and weaknesses and assigning a point value based on how that is listed in the document. Whoever has the most points wins. Cost is still a factor, but we'll have a point value associated to it. Then there's the best value method, which is a narrative method. This is where we're still looking at that evaluation criteria. We go through the evaluation of each criteria for each vendor. We document strengths and weaknesses of that vendor's proposal, and then we narratively justify why that vendor provides the best value to the state. Again, cost is always one of those factors, but we can look at those other factors and justify based on the fact that this vendor provided the best overall value to the state, provides the best staffing, provides the best experience, provides the best technical approach, and able to justify that narratively that then we base that award and justify that award on. So those are the three different ways, whatever the way that that agency is going to evaluate will be listed in the bid. If you have any questions on it, ask them during the question and answer period. We also could ask for reference checks. The reference section would be added to the bid document. It will say, hey, here's the reference checks. We do have an attachment that asks a reference sheet attachment that most of our agencies are using now. But just look out for those must, may provide. If you have to provide those references, we will then ask for, it may say the state may check those references, and then we would be looking for, have you done in your, what you say you've done in your proposal? So that's what we're looking for, is the work that you've done for that reference of the same size and scope as to what we were looking to. So we're just using the reference as a confirmation that you've done what you said you've done. The vendor will ask, we will ask the references the same questions. So if you provided 3 references, we're asking the same questions to all 3 references. And we're documenting those answers to become part of the bid file. The request for clarification, I think somebody asked about this. So request for clarification happens during the evaluation stage where we get something in a proposal that we don't understand. It is usually a yes, no confirmation. So we could say, you stated in your proposal that you have done XYZ. Did you really mean XY7? Yes or no? And then you select yes or no. It will maybe give you a little bit way to provide a little more information, but we can't ask you for additional information or additional services. We can't ask you for anything like that during a question. It's just really, we're asking you for clarification for what was in your proposal. You cannot change your pricing. You cannot change what you have proposed. We are asking for clarification on what you have proposed. If we get into a bid that we then are getting into negotiations, we have under the administrative code the right to negotiate with all vendors, one vendor, no vendors. So with that, we can enter into negotiations. They can take place over phone or email, but they are confirmed once everybody agrees on this document that's called a BAFO document, which is the best and final offer. We can negotiate anything. We can negotiate costs. We could negotiate, maybe this was a phase project and we only have enough budget to do phase 1. So now give me your best pricing for phase 1. It could be, we don't like the way that you technically were going to approach this task. Will you do this instead? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, we can negotiate that. Those negotiations are then confirmed on that best and final offer that becomes the final solicited contract. It's signed by both parties. Executive Order 50 is a attachment in the back of IFBs. It is for goods only, which is why it's only in the IFB document. This was set up when Bev Perdue was our governor. It is a price match opportunity for goods vendors to match an out-of-state vendor's bid for goods. So you do have to say, I'm a North Carolina headquartered business, and then you have to be within 5% or $10,000 of the out-of-state vendor. We call you and say, you signed up to do the price matching EO50. Would you like to match the out-of-state vendor's pricing to keep those dollars within North Carolina? That is how that works. It's an attachment in the back of our IFBs. If you would like to participate in that, and you have to be headquartered in North Carolina, that's the attachment that you would fill out. Any questions on any of that?
No questions in the chat. We've answered all of those. And so I'm going to say forge ahead.
Moving right along.
Yes.
All right, we are getting to the end. So you've gone through all the hoopla to bid and have it evaluated and get all that, and now you have an award. Yay. So we're going to go through what happens when you get awarded the contract, award notifications, purchase orders, and then get you paid with some invoices. So award notification, know that your agency purchasing office will send you usually a memo that states the terms of the contract. It's very basic. It says, you have been awarded this contract for this much money for this amount of time. This is when your contract starts. Oh, and by the way, that turns the wrench, that is the contract administrator that you can now talk to. So it gives you all of that information as well. All of that documentation, including the executed contract, will be attached in e-procurement, and a purchase order will be issued. The award will be posted then also on EBP, and it will stay out there for indefinitely of who was awarded. It's usually posted within 3 days of getting those final approvals. Once the contract is awarded, you can then contact the contract administrator. During the entire bid process, the only person that you could talk to was the purchasing office, because we are the keeper of the information. We want to make sure that all the information during the bid process was getting to all the vendors. So until that process is over, and then once it's awarded, if you have any questions, contact the purchasing office. Once it has been awarded, you can then talk to the individual contract administrators. Your purchase order, because you are registered in EVP and because you are now want to receive those purchase orders through e-procurement, we will send you a purchase order that's associated with that contract, that quote, whatever it was, that small purchase, whatever it was, you should receive a purchase order for it. It is a description of the items or service. Like I said, there are line items. It potentially could have, here's your goods, here's your shipping costs. Make sure that you always include your shipping costs for goods, and then make sure that it is a separate line item, because shipping is a service, not a good. Bid contract number, accounting codes, pricing, delivery schedule. We have the ability within purchase orders to put in comments that go directly to you. Maybe we don't have a loading dock. Maybe we don't have, maybe here's now the buyer's information, and here's now the contract administrator's information. Here's where to submit that W-9. Here's all of that information potentially could be in the comments of your purchase order. Your invoice should match the purchase order. So make sure that the line items are consistent with what is on your purchase order. Make sure that your address, your remit to address is on the is correct on the invoicing that matches your tax ID to be able to pay right. Your bill to address is whatever was on the PO. So if I cut the PO at the purchasing level, you wouldn't send the invoice to purchasing, you would send it to facility management, is actually who the bill to address was on the PO. So make sure you are actually sending your invoice to whoever the bill to address is on the purchase order. Include what you've done, what's been completed, purchase order. If there was some kind of reports that had to come with your invoice, make sure they are on there. Any more information you can put on your invoice, the better. Ensure that remit to address is current. And then we typically pay, the state never pays up front, so know that. but we also pay net 30, and that's net 30 from the time that that invoice is approved for payment. We at DOA have the best fiscal office in the state, so we usually pay much quicker than 30, but we do have, that's what our code says, that's what your contract says, is all that the state pays net 30. Check writes are on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and because it is 2024, we do have electronic payments. If you would like to sign up for electronic payments, electronic funds transfer, EFTs, this is the website to do that with the comptroller's office to get set up to get those electronic funds transfers. Otherwise, check writes happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays with the state. Any question on payments and award? Yep. Aranetta?
Hi, yeah, can you put the link back up again? It went
Sure.
away really quick.
Yep. Sorry.
It
And
will
like I
be
said,
in
you'll get a copy of this
presentation.
presentation, so that's in there too, but yeah. And it's under invoicing. All right. All right, getting into contract monitoring. So now you have this contract, you're into the years of this contract. Headset dying. You can still hear me, right? Thumbs up. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get into contract management, inspections and testing, renewals and amendments, vendor protests, and then a big thing to utilize is the public records request. So you have this contract. If your contract administrator has not reached out to you, you reach out to them. It's always a good idea to have a kickoff meeting, especially for a multi-year contract. Get on the same page, know what's in your terms and conditions, clarify those delivery expectations, communicate your roles and responsibilities, communicate and make sure that the scope of work that is in there is what you will be held to. If you have any questions on that, make sure that you clarify any goals or objectives that are supposed to happen under that contract. The state will notify the vendor of any damaged goods we get, any inaccurate order or late shipment. But if you know something is on back order, let us know so that we can then figure out what we need to do to make sure that we're getting what we need. Invoices will not be paid until the using agency completes the inspections of goods and they accept it and receive it in e-procurement. Once a PO is received, you can then invoice against it. Delivery is not considered when we talk about equipment being installed. If there is an installation piece, we will not pay those invoices until that installation is good, that product is up and running, and any waste and debris has been removed from the site, and it's ready to go. Vendor complaints. So if we have a problem with a vendor, it has taken all of that jazz to get this contract up and running. It has taken a lot of work from the vendor community. It has taken a lot of work from the purchasing office. It's taken work from our contract administrator to get all the scope together. It's taken time and effort and approvals and all of that. We want these contracts to work as much as you do. So if some contract administrator comes up and says, hey, I have a problem, try to work it out with them. Try to fix it. Even if we need to amend the contract to fix that problem, we can do that. But take those complaints seriously. Do your best efforts to try to fix them and get on the same page. If a contract administrator feels like they can't get the vendor to do what they're due, their next option is to come back to the purchasing office, show me all the documentation where you gave the vendor the opportunity to fix it. And if they're still not doing it, you could receive a formal vendor complaint from the purchasing office. Please take that seriously. It has deadlines where you have to respond to that formal complaint, and it should include an action to fix the problem. If you have received one of these and you agree with the action to fix the problem, you simply sign it and get it back to us. But you do have to respond. If we get no response from the vendor, we could terminate. It also gives you the opportunity to say, no, I don't agree with this complaint. Let's set up a meeting. Let's get to the bottom of this. So
just, you have to respond to it. Make sure if you get one of those, the contract administrator has felt like they haven't gotten anywhere with you trying to fix the problem. They've come to the purchasing office. Now they've escalated the problem. So just be aware that if you ever get one of those, to make sure and read it closely and respond. Renewals. So like I said, our standard is 3-year contracts. Sometimes that's written as a 3-year with 2 optional renewals. There are lots of reasons why we do not opt to use those optional renewals. It could be funding. It could be that we feel like the scope has changed so much we need to put it back out for bid. It could be that we just don't need it anymore. It could be that there's a problem with performance. It could be any number of reasons as to why we don't use those renewals. But if we are going to use it, it is up to our discretion at the state to use a renewal. And you will get an agreement or an amendment that says that we are opting to use that renewal. We do not have to let you know that we are not using that renewal. But we do have to let you know if we are opting, and we have to give you 30 days that says, yes, we want to continue this contract. Most agencies, including ours, creates a new purchase order for every year of the contract. Make sure that your invoices match the new purchase order for the next year of that contract. Amendments are used when we change anything during a contract. So it could be that maybe we're at the end of that 3 years and we need to extend this contract. So we need to amend to extend. It could be that there's a change. It could be that we need to change costs, that we need to change rates, that we need to change scope. It could be for anything. But only the purchasing office can change the terms of the contract. Because like I said, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. Do not let your contract administrator tell you that you are doing landscape and just add in some termite treatment. Because if it's not written down, we're not paying for it when we all of a sudden get an invoice that doesn't have a PO attached to it. So make sure you say, no, we need to write it down and amend the contract to make sure it's in there. Just that covers you and us to make sure that everybody's on the up and up. So amendments are used to make those changes once we have a contract. So like I said, vendor protests are for the formal bid process. If we ever have something where you feel like something was not right during the formal bid process, you do have to participate in that bid to be able to submit a protest. In the instructions of vendors, we'll tell you where to submit a protest letter. You must submit a written request to the state purchase officer with the Division of Purchasing Contract, or DIT. It must be submitted within 30 days from the date of award, and it must contain the specific reasons or any supporting documentation of that protest. They have the right to, right up front with your written, say, we deny your protest. They do have also the option to bring you in and talk about your protest and still say, we deny your protest. Or we have the right to uphold your protest and do any number of things. They could say, you have to rebid it. They could say, okay, now it's awarded to this guy. We could say anything like that to change the outcome of the bid. So there's multiple ways that a protest could end. But all that information is instructions to bid. You do have to participate to submit a protest. All right, here's the last one that's a biggie for you, is that you can submit everything we do in public procurement is public record. So we have retention rules where we have to keep files for any contract 5 years after expiration. So you can go back and ask an agency to produce the procurement file for anything that they've done where the contract is valid for 5 years after expiration. Most of our departments now have a form online where you can submit to get access to that procurement file. Know that you are asking the agency that posted that bid for that file. So if it is a DPS posting, you need to go to DPS communications office to get that file. If it's a DOA procurement, you go to DOA's communications office to get that file. Give them as much information as you can to help find that file. What is it called? What is the contract number? Who's the awarded vendor? What were the purchase orders under it? How, and then it's going to ask you, how do you want to receive those? I think pretty much everybody's doing everything electronic. instead of having a physical review, but I guess you could. Know what you want to see out of that file. Some of these files are ginormous. So if you want to see, hey, I submitted a bid to bid number XYZ. This is what it was for. I want to see the recommendation for award letter. The recommendation for award letter that went to statewide procurement is going to have all the information that justifies how they awarded the way that they awarded. It's going to say you were found non-responsive for not submitting your contractor's license. It's going to say your experience did not meet what we were looking for because it wasn't of the same size and scope. We were looking for XYZ. It will have all of that information in it. So potentially that's probably the best document to ask for. You can see other vendors' bids. So keep that in mind. When you are submitting a bid, that if you have trade secrets, you can mark those as confidential that will not be released in a public records request, but it's on the vendor to mark what you want confidential. Pricing can never be marked as confidential. So it's on you when you're submitting your bid to decide what is a trade secret to be marked as confidential. And then those things, financial records, things like that, potentially would not be released during a public records request. Know that public records requests can take some time. One, because we're finding the file. We cut millions of POs a day. So trying to find the contract file with little information is very difficult. So give us enough information to find it. Then our communications team is going through and redacting the file from everything that every vendor has made confidential. So it takes some time to get those releases of those public records, but know that that's there at your disposal to be able to see that. While a contract is out for bid, you cannot ask to see the record of the past contract that's being rebid. So if you have a janitorial contract for this room, you cannot pull the file. You can ask me how much I'm currently paying and who the current vendor is, but you can't see the past bids while it's currently posted. So just know that do that work up front, do that work in the back end if you want to see why you didn't get awarded, those types of things. These are those website resources that are out there for you. So I have statewide purchase and contracts website where all their state term contracts are posted, as well as the administrative code and all of their information. Statewide DIT, same thing. That's where those resources are for DIT procurement. EVP is where you register and where you see the bids. E-procurement is where you get the training and those job aids for sourcing, for e-procurement, for EVP. All of the training is on the e-procurement website. And then the hub office, check out their calendar, check out what all they have going on. They've got some great opportunities for hub members. Any questions? And I believe that is it.
No questions in the chat, and we can open the floor for questions since there are none in the chat, if someone wants to unmute.
Yes, quick question. I know you always say we're gonna get a copy of the presentation, but how do I find it? Because I never get them. I've taken lots of classes.
We usually email the slide deck itself along with a link to our YouTube channel.
Okay, and do I just look under NCDOA?
It is going to come from NC Hub.
NC Hub, okay.
Actually, I'm sorry. In this particular case, it will come from Carla Copes. So it'll come from my email address. You may want to check your security settings and junk mail folder in the event that you're not receiving them.
Okay, and one more question. She gave the link for the OSC to sign up for, I guess, basically like the electronic, but I went there just real quick. Is there any way you could show that? Just to see that I'm not going to the wrong place to sign up for the electronic at the, I think you said OSC?
OSC, yeah, let me see if I can pull it up.
Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank
Good.
you.
Okay. So this is where it takes you to OSC.nc.gov, and it gives you all the information on wire transfers, all of that.
Okay, perfect. So I was at the wrong place. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And you can just Google OSC. I mean, that's where to get into that. State agency resources, statewide electronic commerce, and then EFT. Yeah.
So is there like an application you have to fill out to be eligible to get this?
To be honest, I don't know what the
Okay, just start here.
yeah. Yeah.
I'll just start here. Thank you.
I always tell my accounting people, they'll ask me about their money and their budgets. I'm like, I just am here to spend the money. I don't know anything about your money.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'll start with this website. It didn't look like what I Googled. So
Yeah, and then if
thank
you have
for
any problems,
clarifying.
you can always contact OSC. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
The other thing is I was going to kind of get into the weeds of EVP. So when you're searching for vendors, if you browse for vendors, it's the same thing here where you can search for vendors' names, hub service. And this is where, when John was saying you can look at your own customer number, those types of things. There also, if you hit this area, gets into a more advanced search here to search vendors. That's how we search vendors. For solicitations, this is going to list out every solicitation that's ever been posted here. But if you hit the filters button, that's where you can get into, let's just say this is where all, like I said, everybody posts. If you would like to, Department of Administration, you can see, if we want to see everything that we've ever posted, hit apply, and it's going to give you all of the information. So right now, all of these are awarded. If we get into, say, I think we have, yeah, here's something open. So we have for our Albemarle building is currently open. It's still receiving bids. I believe it closes tomorrow on the 19th. But it'll show you, this is the IFB for that posting. There was an addendum, and then there was another mandatory return addendum that was posted. So when those addendums are posted, it gives them here as well. So all of that, if I wanted to participate in this, I would have to sign in and put intends to participate. It would then send me a link to the sourcing tool that then you can get into. So that's kind of how EVP then links you into the Ariba sourcing tool. So your EVP is still your one-stop shop for responding to a solicitation.
All right. And yes, the slides will be provided via email. That was a question in the chat.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? If no other questions or comments, Meredith, on behalf of the Hub Office and Director Alicia Lyon, thank you for taking the time to partner with us for this training and provide such detail. Thank you for your patience in answering all the questions and providing this great information for our vendors.